Hi there, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. For those of you who are on this call now probably know that I'm the Chief Executive of the IEP. I think you might see that the avatar is back by popular demand and definitely better than the real thing. Welcome to the IEP webinar series. We are a long way along our webinar series now in partnership with many different IEP partner organisations and members. This is the first of two webinars in a mini series from Lightbulb moment. This week's webinar is entitled How to Make Live Online Learning Engaging, and is brought to you by Joe and Mike from Lightbulb moment. We have a really excellent webinar program for you over the coming weeks, looking at subjects from coaching to employer engagement, online learning, etc. And if you've enjoyed a number of the other previous webinars, you can access them really easy through the IEP YouTube channel. If you enjoyed our long series of webinars from the Better Health generation, don't worry, they will also be back in the next few weeks with some stuff around returning to work and how we effectively manage that. You can get all the details to everything we're doing about the webinar series with all of our amazing partner organisations that are delivering these for us and with us through the IEP Learning Network e-bulletin. If you don't get it, go to the website and make sure you get hold of that. And please make sure that you stay safe, stay well, and get chatting on the chat link. It's really nice to hear where you're from, what you're doing, what the weather's like. I don't think one of our colleagues will be hanging out there washing today necessarily, but it's all our webinars are recorded and available on the IEP YouTube channel. So back over.
Thank you very much, Scott. What an amazing introduction and all sorts of stuff that's going on there. So today it's all about an engaging online learning environment. I'm your facilitator today, and I started Lightbulb Moment 7 years ago. And what we do is we focus on helping teams to design and deliver really great webinars and virtual classrooms. My background includes being self-employed, the further and higher education sector, the charity sector, as well as some really large companies like Bupa International and also CNN News. So I'm really hoping there's something we can all discuss today. Also in chat, you've probably seen Mike pasting information in there and typing away and helping you. He is our producer today. If you have any technical problems or any questions about our content, you can just message him and he will respond to you. Let's have a look at our online tools to make sure we're happy and we can get everything working. Please click on your participants panel first of all. So you might need to wiggle your mouse, click on that picture of the head, and what that will do is open up the participants panel. From there, what you can do is you can use the green tick and the red X in order to answer questions. Let's try that out right now. Everybody click the green tick, please. So go and click that green tick. It's a great way to say, yes, I agree, or yes, I've had that experience. And when we ask questions, of course, you're more than welcome to click the red X and say, no, I disagree, Joe. And one of you have already done that now. Thank you. So we've all gone and found that. We'll be using that throughout this session. Thank you so much. It's a great way to interact. Today, what we're going to look at in our session is look at some terminology and make sure we understand and we're using wordings properly. We're going to look at some of the challenges that we have in live online learning. Excuse me whilst I clear my throat. That's a little bit better. We're going to look at some of the challenges, including being the speaker, such as I was just now. And how about when we train people we can't see and what's kind of going on there? And then we're going to focus an awful lot on engaging people and how we do that remotely. So let's have a green tick if you're thinking this is looking good. Or of course, in the chat window, if you're thinking, are you going to cover this? And you have a specific thing. So a green tick if you're thinking, yep, I'm happy with this. Or in the chat window, if you think, are you going to cover this? There's this particular thing I want today. So you're always welcome to do that. Lots of green ticks from you all. Thank you so much. Jonathan says, I'm excited to use this tech once my furlough ends. Well, we're excited about it too, Jonathan, and hopefully we'll have some conversations that can help you today. So we also have the chat window. Some of you are using that already. If you haven't got it open, please make sure you wiggle your mouse, you click on that speech bubble, and then what you'll have is your chat window. It should be set to everyone, and then you can type in your hellos and let us know where you are, as you've been doing. Also, what you can do is ask questions of me or of Michael, and you can ask questions of Scott, who's here today, and you can just chat with each other. If you've got an idea or a theory, or you've got a link where you're thinking, actually, this article was really good, you can go and share those things in there as well. And Eveline, you're on different tablets and using different screens, so that sounds pretty good as well. So good to experiment. So let's look first of all at the very first topic is about language and about the words that we use. So first of all, what is a webinar? How would you define that? Everybody type in that chat window, please. What is a webinar? How are you defining what a webinar is? So how would you explain it to your colleagues, to your friends, down the pub, when we can get back there? What is a webinar? It's training online, it's visual, it's an online classroom environment, it's a remote information, a virtual seminar. Really great answers here, not in the same location. Thank you, Rob. And all of this is about coming together, learning online, says Tracy. Thank you. And I really like the idea that it's live. Uma says it's a virtual way to connect and deliver training. And I think that idea of connection is really important. Eveline adds listen and learn online. And often webinars are a little bit more presentation based, but they should be really interactive. And as Sharon says here, it's about meeting with others. And that's why things like the chat window are so important, so that you start getting that feeling of being with other people. Completely agree with what you've got going on here. It is about the software platform we use. We're using Zoom today, for example, and it's about the functionality that might be in that platform. Also, it's about lots of people coming together. We've got quite a few of you here today, and a lot of people could be 30 people. It could be 3,000 people. It just depends on your context. And Annabelle, you're right. It's a seminar on the web that's live online. So how do we contrast that then with a virtual classroom? Or you might call it virtual facilitation, live online learning, VILT, virtual instructor-led training. You might have different names. So what's that? What is a virtual classroom if it's not a webinar? So if a virtual classroom isn't a webinar, what on earth is it? So again, in chat, what do you think? So what's a virtual classroom if it's not a webinar? So Jonathan says it's a different level of interaction from the learners and it's more didactic. Jonathan, can you tell us what you mean by it's more didactic, please? It's interactive, there's less people, says Kevin. There's interaction, there's breakout rooms. Yes, breakout rooms are brilliant. There's whiteboards. It's more interactive than a webinar. It could be a community of learners. It's facilitated. And I think that's a really important point. It's all about the facilitation. It's about getting to know people as individuals and kind of working with them. It's a classroom, says Bekele, without the physical presence. And it's also about using video links. Annabelle, you're right, especially with Zoom, a lot of us are using the video part on that now. Not everyone, not all the time, but certainly that's really possible. It's moderated, says Shirley. I think that's a great point. And with that didactic point, Jonathan says it's more a one-way style of delivery where the teacher talks more to the learner as opposed to webinars, which are more of a discussion. It's really interesting that you think about it that way around, Jonathan. For me, it's usually the other way around, but it's all about what's our experience and what's our approach, and you can deliver in a didactic style or a more conversational style. It's entirely up to you. So for me, a live online learning or a virtual classroom, it's about having less people, maybe 10 people in a virtual classroom, and certainly about those conversations. L. Oswell, you're saying you tend to facilitate conversations more in a virtual classroom. That tends to be my approach today. It's conversational in the chat, but this is still a webinar with lots and lots of you. Oh, it's Leslie, thank you. So then let's contrast this with one more thing. This is another term that we use a lot, e-learning. So what's e-learning if it's not a webinar and it's not a virtual classroom? So what's e-learning? So Jonathan thinks he must have misunderstood the terminology. Not necessarily, Jonathan. It's about your experience. So certainly I see webinars as often much more didactic and presentation based, and today is a little bit more didactic because there's so many of you. But then the virtual classroom with 10 of you, in my experience, should be more conversational, but it doesn't have to be. It could still be that way, Jonathan. So it's not about misunderstanding, it's about experience. Thank you, Jonathan. So what is e-learning? Robin says it could be SCORM packages. So these are those kind of e-learning, self-paced, click next that you upload. It could be solitary, yeah, it's usually us on our own, solo online training. The learner is in control, you do it by yourself. And it's self-learning, that's a good point. It's facilitated by the technology and it's electronic means. And it can be less interactive. Yeah, you might have quizzes and things that you can move around, but it's not interactive with other people. Michaela says it could be pre-recorded sessions that learners watch in their own time. And I think you make a great point there. Traditionally, e-learning would be that click next module. As you say, it's self-paced. You decide how quickly or slowly you move through that, as opposed to today, I'm in control of how quickly we move through this. It could be you've accessed this in a learning management system, or you might have done something yourself on Udemy, FutureLearn, or LinkedIn Learning, and all sorts of other things. Do these labels actually matter? Does the name, does the terminology make a difference? What do you think? Share something in chat. Does the name we use matter? Whether it's webinar, virtual classroom, e-learning, what do you think? So some people are saying no, and some people are using a red X, which is brilliant. Some people are using a green tick and saying, yes, it is. And in chat, people are saying, yes, it helps the learner with what they expect. It manages those expectations. It can help focus when we're creating our lessons. The learner can know whether they want to actually join in or not. It doesn't really matter as long as they understand the format. The label doesn't matter so much. Thank you, Annabelle. Rob, was it Rob? Sorry, Leslie says it needs to appeal to different learning types. Yeah, some people love videos. Some people love just reading things on their own. We all have our preferences. Also, what we've got, Karen makes an interesting point. Amongst specialists, it makes a difference. With students, yeah, they probably don't mind as much as long as they get what they need and they can do what they need. So there's some really great points here all the way through about where the terminology is important and where it isn't. It's about how you know, how you learn best. So I think the name matters when we're managing people's expectations. But as Kathy says, as long as the objectives are met and participants find it useful and valuable, actually the terminology doesn't matter. If everyone understands what the expectations are. And I think that's the point. Because unfortunately, a lot of us have been on webinars that have been a bit rubbish. How about a green tick if you're thinking, oh, so many webinars, Joe, that I've been on. They're not interactive, they talk at you, they're salesy, the slides are bad. Oh, we could just go on for days, couldn't we? And Leslie's just gone, yes. And there's lots of green ticks. Yeah, lots of talk and chalk, where, you know, you're not involved and people aren't responding to what's going on. Obviously not all webinars are rubbish, but a lot of the experiences can be pretty bad. So let's look at these challenges face on. When thinking about live online sessions, whether it's a webinar or a virtual classroom, what are the challenges you're already experiencing or the ones you anticipate? So thinking about webinars and virtual classrooms in the chat window, what are the challenges you're already experiencing or that you anticipate? The tech glitches, tech failures, internet failures, they're a real thing. But you know what? So are crashes on the motorway that delay people, and you know, your projector not working in your room, your air conditioning not working. But you're right, tech is a big problem that we have. People not interacting, that you've asked a question and there's just tumbleweed. You can hear the crickets. Nobody's there doing anything. We have to worry about people's abilities with ICT. Can they do something in the first place? Is their internet stable enough? Do they have the ability to use something like Zoom? What are the distractions going on around them, especially at the moment? How many of you, you're at home, you've got cats crawling across your keyboard, you've got dogs barking at you because they want to be let out, you've got kids going, Mum, Dad, and it just, there's so many distractions. Maintaining focus for people is a real challenge because of all of those other things going on. Emails pinging in, messages coming in. There's some green ticks from some of you saying about dogs and cats and kids. Dahlia, you've put here, not carry people with me. I'm assuming what you're meaning there is about the ability to take people on that learning journey and helping them with that. And if you mean something else, please add it in chat and I'll come to it shortly. Also, it's kind of, do we know if people are involved? If we can't see them, if we can't see what's going on, thank you for the green tick, Dahlia, that's what you meant. If we can't see them, how do we know they're paying attention? How do we know they're not just on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it might be? How do we deal with late arrivals? How do we keep people interested? And doing the very first one to a new audience, Vic, oh, that's always challenging to be able to think about that in a new group. Melina says, feeling that I am just talking and being unsure how to engage the learners. These are all great points and things that we're going to discuss today. And hopefully you're picking up some things already about how you can do things like make a personal connection, as Uma has said here. We've got the ideas also that we need to think about unwelcome guests. That's a good point, Rob. Michael is going to share in the chat window for you a link to some resources we've got about Zoom bombing and those unwelcome guests and how to deal with that. So hopefully that can be a little bit useful, but it is something that people are really aware of. Joan says it can be harder to read body language, and yet we just can't see each other. I can't see you today. Normally I'd be looking around you as a group and seeing you nodding or smiling or laughing, and I can't see any of that. So I'm having to imagine it a little bit and find different ways of being able to do that. So you've got some great things already that you are pointing out here that are some challenges. And these are the things that we need to be able to deal with. Now, what we're going to try now, this might get a little bit messy, but we're going to give this a go, is we are going to have a play with the annotation tools. So let's go and switch those on and see if we can get those working. Look at the top of your screen, click the View Options button and click Annotate. If you've clicked that View Options and then Annotate, what you should have come up is your annotation toolbar, and I can see some of you are playing already. So what I'd like you to do, please, is if you haven't already, mouse over the screen, make sure that little menu comes up at the top, and then you go and click on View Options. Now, the actual tool that I want you to use, we're going to practice this now. Some of you have seen it. It's the stamp tool. So just go and have a look on your annotation toolbar. You should be able to see you've got a tick there. It says stamp. If you click on it on your toolbars, there's a picture on the top of the screen. That's the example I'm showing you. If you find that on your own annotation toolbar, then you should be able to use the heart or the tick or the X, whichever one you like. Look at all this creativity. This is amazing. So if any of you can't get this working, drop a note in chat and Mike will help you with this. So we are going to use this stamp tool in just a moment on a question. So I'm going to ask you a question and get you to use your stamp tool. But what I need you to do, guys, is stop. Let's just pause for a second, because I need to clear all of your beautiful artwork and actually move on to the next slide. So what I'd like you to do is just pause. And the question I've got for you, and you can answer this in chat if it's not working for you on the slide, you don't need to worry, is about our comfort zone. Delivering virtually is definitely outside of the comfort zone for a lot of people. So where are you? Use your stamp tool for virtual classrooms and webinars. Are you inside your comfort zone delivering these, or are you outside of your comfort zone? So use your stamp tool. Are you inside your comfort zone with webinars and virtual classrooms, or are you outside of your comfort zone? There's a few people on the edge. There's a few people drawing arrows of like, I'm moving one way or the other, which is brilliant. And if it's not working on your device, please don't worry. You can just type in the chat window. And some of you are saying it's definitely outside of your comfort zone. And Scott's saying that picture is not big enough. I think we just need a whole other playground with chalk on for you, Scott. So for a lot of you, this is way out of your comfort zone. And that's absolutely fine, because quite frankly, not all of us wanted to be here. Not all of us wanted to do this. Deb says in chat, it is new, but we're in the business of dealing with what next. So bring it on. Oh, Deb, I'm going to give you a massive high five on that. That's pretty awesome. Okay, everybody, thank you very much. Let's just pause on the annotations. You can close your annotation toolbar. If you have a look on the right-hand side, there's a little X. Go and click on that X, please, and that will turn off your annotation toolbar. And let's move on to our next point. So you can go and turn that off. Okay, Claire says, I'm an ex-trainer, fine in a classroom, but on here I go so shy, no clue why. Claire, that's absolutely fair enough. You are not the only person that feels that way. And there's a variety of reasons that could be. You know, if this is a new way of working and the idea of using all of that tech and everything, and how you present, and are you going to be able to do various different things, it might make you feel that way. Jonathan said, I've not done this before, but I've got experience of learning with text. I'm excited to try, which is absolutely amazing. And Matt says, really nice applied use of the annotation tool. We'll be using this. My pleasure, Matt. It's all about having a bit of fun. And Val says, it's the same as when you first walk into a classroom. You're right. You know, we're on a journey here. Some of us are being forced by this current situation that we're in. And that's why I want to know, why are you doing this? What are the benefits of this to you? You're here on this webinar today because hopefully you want to learn something about this way of working and delivering. So what are the benefits? Val, you're saying pay, you're being paid to do it. Well, that's fair enough. Money talks. But it's about kind of like, well, where are we on our journey? Some of us are out of our comfort zone. Some of us are classroom trainers, and we absolutely need all of those skills and experience that we have when we're working live online. We just need to layer on some new skills. Val says, oh yes, of course, it's learning too. Of course it is. Chantel says it's working smarter, not harder. Scott says it is interesting to see if we would have changed if not for this situation. I'm an absolute convert, thanks to Helen. And that's really important. You know, sometimes it's the impetus of what's going on that's really important. So if you're missing any of this, don't worry. There will be a version of this on YouTube that you can catch up with later on. So why are we doing this? To learn something new, to continue delivering what we've done before, to evaluate what's the best application to use. We need to move with the times. This is the new norm. Interesting you say that, Jeanette. Absolutely. So we've got lots of different things that we're doing here. And what I'm trying to highlight to you is what I think is that actually live online learning can be great. Webinars can be amazing. Virtual classrooms, you can really get an amazing group connection. And that's what we're here to do today, to explore this together about live online sessions. I've built a whole business around it, so I certainly believe that this is the way forwards. So let's look at some of those different challenges we have and see if we can start addressing them. So delivery is one of those things where we have a remote audience, where actually we can't see people. Sometimes in our Zoom sessions, we might have our videos on, and that's absolutely great. But before COVID-19, that was not the normal. And actually, it's still not always the normal to have videos on. We might have bandwidth issues, which means we can't have our videos on all the time. We aren't always used to doing this. Even if we're used to things like Skype or Zoom meetings now, it's very different from delivering and training a group of people. And yet we have to bring all this professionalism, all of our energy from our face-to-face delivery into this live online environment. So when delivering, what I do is I look at the list of people's names. Now, these are screen grabs from Adobe Connect, which is a different platform. So I thought I'd bring those in just to contrast our experience today. So what I do is I look at people's names, and some of you today in Zoom, I can see they've got little pictures, you've got little icons of yourself or photographs. So this just reminds me that you are real people. When we're looking at the chat, I look at your names and I talk to your names because you're real people. You've asked real questions. So what we need to start seeing are the people in different ways. We need to use things like the feedback emoticons. They're not the same as body language. Of course they're not. But it's a very small way to get the interaction, to get the idea of people nodding, other green ticks. And it just allows us to be able to start seeing people. And Annabelle says, I was surprised and delighted to be named from a comment I made. This hasn't happened on a webinar before for me. Oh, Annabelle, that's lovely. And do you know what, Annabelle? I remember the very first time I was on a webinar years and years and years ago. I could tell you who the presenter was when he read out a comment and said, Joe Cook says blah, 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 blah. And it just made my heart swell. It was amazing because that connection is what it's all about. Now, with so many of you here today, I can't get to know you all, but I can start to get to know a group. And by asking these questions, by getting you involved, even with something simple like those green ticks, like with the chat, it allows me to start seeing that you're real people and not just a computer screen. So when we're thinking about our webinars, when we're thinking about our virtual classrooms, what is an interaction? I've mentioned that word a few times. And Paul says, this is empowering and refreshing my training knowledge from the past. Paul, that is lovely, because live online learning that's good is about training that's good. So you make a great point there, Paul. Thank you. And Annabelle's given a green tick there too. So what is an interaction? Let's use that chat window. What do you understand an interaction to be live online? And if you're not sure, that's always absolutely fine. You can always put a guess in the chat window. But how would you explain that? If you're explaining it to your kids or your other half, or maybe you were trying to explain it to a client, how would you explain what that is live online? So in a webinar, what's an interaction? We've done lots of them today. I'll give you a clue. Ah, look at all these answers. Thank you. We've got the chat box, webcam, so that we can talk face to face, communication, a message passed between us, chat, using the icons, not being alone. All the rest of these are going so quickly, sharing and connecting and exchange of views. It's annotation, it's interaction both ways, responding to comments either by agreement or challenge. No, I don't agree with that, Judith. Sorry, was that a bit of an obvious joke? I'm all about the obvious jokes, Judith. It's about engaging. It's about using our platform tools to be able to do that. And Hannah says it's communication, verbal and non-verbal. Or not verbal, you're absolutely right, like clicking buttons and using icons. So Jonathan's used, is that little pirate logo that you've used there, Jonathan? Pirate flag. So really great answers. There are many ways that we can get people involved in what it is that we are doing. We can use things like that green tick and that red X to agree and disagree. If we're in a virtual classroom, you can unmute and comment and discuss. We're using loads of writing in chat. We could use text on a whiteboard. We could use a poll to select the option that tells us something about the group and where to move forwards. We've also got something called a chat, hold and send. That's a really fun thing to do, where you type your answer in chat and then everybody green ticks, and then we've all green ticked, we answer at the same time. It's basically so we don't copy answers from each other. We can draw, we can click a hand up if we want to ask something or make a comment. We could circle an answer on a slide. If we had a Q&A kind of panel, or like on Zoom meeting or WebEx or Adobe Connect, we could use that separately. So there's all sorts of things we can do. And Etheline, you say, you've just found my green tick. I'm learning already. That's brilliant. Kathy says, is hold and send on Zoom? Kathy, chat, hold and send is a technique rather than a particular tool. So let's try this right now. Let's see if we can get this working right now. What we do is I ask you a question, you all type in chat, but you don't hit send. Then you give a green tick. So you type your answer in chat, you green tick, and when everybody's green ticked, we all hit send at the same time. So that's what we're going to try. So I'm going to ask you the world's most simple question, or maybe it's not a simple question. What's your favorite film? So type in chat, but don't send it. Type in chat, but then click the green tick. So type your answer in chat. What is your favorite film? And click the green tick. And when all of you have got green ticks, we'll all send at the same time and the chat will go crazy. So what's your favorite film? Type your answer, then green tick. Oh, we're all being really good right now. Nobody's accidentally sent it. And if one of you doesn't say my favorite film, you'll be in trouble, I can tell you that. Okay, and Mike's saying normally 1 or 2 people do it before the green tick, so you're doing great. Okay, now most of you have got your green tick, so everybody hit send. Send those answers through. What have we got? Oh, Shawshank, amazing. Star Wars, Breakfast at Tiffany's, Harry Potter, Ferris Bueller. Oh, Bueller. Jaws, oh, that's made Mike happy. He likes that. Wonderful Life. Okay, amazing films, and we're not going to go down this rabbit hole. But this is chat, hold and send. And technically this, you could be using this similar to like you would a poll. But the whole idea is here, we're not actually writing an answer being influenced by someone else. And that can be really, really good for different kind of ways of working. And it kind of mixes things up a little bit as well. So you did absolutely amazing there, thank you. And you've made me want to go and watch all sorts of films this evening. And Kathy, I'm very glad could answer your question. So we can be really creative with what we're doing, and we can use those tools in combinations in different ways. And so what I'd like to do now is we are going to use the annotation tools again. So wiggle your mouse, go to the top of the screen, click on options, on view options, and then go and click on those annotation tools again, please. And we're going to use that stamp tool again. And what I'd like you to do is have a think about the work that you've been doing, and maybe even the socializing that you've been doing recently as well. And use your stamp tool to mark the boxes where you've used these features for connecting with people. So any stamp tool you like, or a pen tool. And if that's not working, you can just put a note in chat as well. You don't have to type everything out. You could just kind of say some or all, or a particular one if you wanted to add something in chat. Look at all these stamp tools. These are amazing. So loads of you have used webcams. You're showing the space you're in. You're kind of highlighting to people, this is my garden, this is my kitchen, whatever it is. You're talking to each other. Loads of use of emoticons and chat. Some of you are sharing things in chat. It's a great way to say, hey, have you looked at this video or this learning point? And Scott did that earlier on to the YouTube channel for IEP, where this video will be later on as well. Loads of you are using instant messaging and some are screen share. And also just things outside of work. I think one of the things that our current situation has helped us with is maybe to connect with people in different ways. And I think that's a really nice thing to take into your live online learning. Kevin asks, with the annotation tool, can you as the host see who has clicked on what? So the short answer to that, Kevin, is no, I can't. There is an option that I can switch on in Zoom to allow that, but it's actually, it's really quite clunky, because what it is, it comes up, I think, every time someone clicks, it would say Kevin here and Etheline here and Rob there. It's not actually very easy to use. So whilst technically Zoom can do that, it's not very easy to do. And different platforms have some slightly different nuances. So it depends what platform you're doing and how you're using it as to what you can do. And Rob, you've used an interactive whiteboard, which is brilliant. So something like this is an interactive whiteboard. This is just a slide in my presentation, and you're using the annotation tools on top. So that's all really good stuff. And you've got loads of stuff and drawing pictures as well. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. I'm going to clear all these drawings now, and we are going to move on to our next piece of information. Because I think the really important point here is about making sure that we use regular interaction. So why do you think these interactions are so important to attendees? Type something in the chat, please. David said, how would you get around that to ensure something? So David, I think that wasn't the full question there. If you ask that again in a moment, I'll see if I can answer that for you. So why is this interaction just so important to you guys today? It's checking understanding, consistency, focus, engagement, interest. I think there's a question there from Candile. Mike, can you pick out any questions for me, and I'll answer them in a second, please. It stops people slipping into a daydream, feeling they're involved and they're included. It maintains motivation and shows there's a real person behind the session. It's not just a recording, and that's a really important point as well. It stimulates different parts of the brain and gets us engaged. It's feedback for the facilitator. Yeah, I live off of that. It's amazing. I think you've got loads of great stuff. I think some of you are starting to say some similar things here. It helps with attention span. It changes the learning engagement. And it's good for the presenter to feel they're not talking to themselves. You're right, Deb. I like talking, but maybe not to myself. So I think you've got some great points here. So there was a question from Candile, says, do you give access to participants to annotate, or can they annotate any time? So I am turning that on and off, because there's a lot of you. And whilst I love you experimenting and playing, I think just to keep it nice and clean and tidy on a webinar, I'm actually turning that annotation on and off to allow you and not allow you to do that. So hopefully that's answered your question. And Joan, you make a great point about boosting confidence in clients, the people attending this, or the people you're trying to engage in working in a way forwards. So I think what we need to make sure we're doing is using a range of tools, not just using the same thing. If we asked you green tick if this, green tick if that, green tick if the other the whole time, oh my goodness, you'd get bored. But the fact is we're doing lots of different things throughout the session. And the other key thing is we need to plan this. This doesn't happen just by accident. All of these things have come together because I've thought about what questions, How am I going to ask you? How do I want you to respond? What are the technology features that we've got? So actually, Dahlia, you ask a really good question here. Whilst getting used to the various features of Zoom, what are the simplest features that we can use? And we're using some of those today, Dahlia. So the green tick and the red X, really simple, easy way of asking closed questions. And the chat, you don't have to use the whiteboard, but the green tick, red X, and then build on that in the chat. Like, tell me why you clicked the green tick. They're the two most simple ones to go with and to maintain that engagement. So we've used the stamp tools today. They're quite good fun, as Mike says. But if you're not ready for the whiteboard, then don't use it. Start simple. Definitely start simple. That's a really great question, Dahlia. Thank you. Also, what we need to have a think about is how we're going to structure our sessions. So this is a structure I've put together. We have a link to a blog, and you can have a look at this in more detail a little bit later on. And it can just help you make sure you're thinking about involving people in the session right from the very beginning, getting people involved from the outset. Tells them this is how the session is going to be. It's going to be engaging. You are going to do stuff. And what we have to do is explain those basic tools. Like, I got you to open up the participant panel, then click the green tick. And I used it immediately because I said, here's the agenda, green tick if you're happy. Then I got you involved, asked you Mike might get a bit more involved in sort of explaining how to use the tools or highlighting different things. Today, he's been really involved in the chat window. We want to avoid lecturing to people. That's why I've asked you so many questions and got your ideas and your thoughts so that I can tailor what it is that I'm saying to you as a group. I've already run a webinar this morning similar to this one, but the conversation was different because you're saying different things and you've got different experiences. So looking at this virtual session structure, what do you see here that might be useful to you? What do you see here that might be useful for you when you're thinking about your webinars or your virtual classrooms? What do you see that you're thinking, yeah, that might be useful? Or it could be stuff that you're doing already. In which case, let us know. I'm doing this already and I find it great. So that helps other people as well. So using questioning and engaging with the people that are there in the session, questions and involving them from the start is really important. Getting people involved early on and breaking the ice, ensuring that everyone understands those basic tools, because then we can build on them. The first three in that slide are really important because they're the ones that are a bit more specifically live online. Helen says to find a host or a producer. Now, I'd love to say I'd hire Mike out, but he's a little bit special to me. But this is a really great place where actually you can work with other people either in your organisation or maybe across the IEP, because what you can do, you can divide and conquer. You're dividing the stress and you're conquering it. And actually then what you can do is help each other learn a little bit more and a little bit more quickly. Angela says, I've learned that I need to rewrite my webinar. I need to make it more interactive. That's awesome, Angela. George says, a host or producer and tech support is unlikely to happen. It is a challenge, George, because it's an extra resource. I've got to basically pay Michael for the hour that he's here. He's had to log in sort of 45 minutes early. There's a 15-minute debrief. So, that is an extra resource, quite frankly. But sometimes it's about investing and how can we learn better together. And that's something to think about. Maybe I can actually support my colleague outside of working hours, quite frankly, but I'm going to learn and feel more confident myself. So that might be another way to think about it. What else is really good at this point? The annotation, introducing the tools. Some of the features can be handy to get learners to write their answers to their problems. Love that idea, Jonathan. Also things like getting learners to use audio, avoiding the lecture, and not over-designing or over-complicating. Oh, Jeanette, I was designing something the other day and I was like, I'm just making this way too complicated. Let's just go back to chat and just use that, because that's nice and simple, and definitely start there. Tracy says, is there guidance if you're using an Android device? Tracy, if you know that your attendees are largely going to be on a tablet or an iPad or something like that, that you do have to design differently. So you'd need to know, well, what can you or can't you do on a tablet? So maybe there's no text tool. So great, we'll just use the drawing tools, the pen tool. Or maybe you know that actually it's really hard for them to use the chat window, so we'll unmute a lot more, something like that. So you definitely need to know how it works on the smartphone and design differently when you're doing it that way. Also, what we're doing here is we are deconstructing what we do face-to-face. If we know how we're working face-to-face really well, then we can go, normally I'd look around the classroom at this point to read the body language of people. I can't do that right now. So I'll ask a green tick question instead to see where people are at and get that level of understanding, and then use the chat window to build that up. The whole point of what we're doing here is getting everybody involved. By getting people involved in the whiteboards, with the emoticons, in the chat, with the annotation tools, with polling, and being creative with our design, this is how it helps me to start seeing a group like you are today, but also individuals like I do in my virtual classrooms. Dalia has asked a question. Dalia, if you want to ask that publicly in the chat, I'll go and answer that question for you as well. And Leslie said, get more relaxed input if you tell delegates that there are no spelling or grammar police here. Yeah, actually, I normally do that, Leslie, at the beginning of the session. I hadn't done that today, because live online actually is absolutely not worrying about spelling or anything like that. So that's a really good point, because it does make people more relaxed and engaged. Okay, so let's go into, so Kevin says, do you have a favorite platform to use, and why? Is it Zoom or Skype or whatever? That is a really good question. And I think the point about having a favorite platform is it's about what are you using it for. So my favorite platform in terms of what's everybody using and what's accessible for so many people, well, that would be Zoom, like we're using today. If my favorite platform is for a really well-designed, engaging virtual classroom tool, actually it's Adobe Connect, like Leslie is saying. I love that because it's got many more features, and it's actually more secure in some ways than Zoom is as well. Martin says, we have to use Teams in my organisation. How do you rate this? So I always say you have to go with the tool that you've got. And if you've got Teams, you need to make the most of it. What Mike will do is share a link to our community where we're discussing Teams, because there are some limits on it, quite frankly, and Darren's gone blah about Teams, because it wasn't designed as a virtual classroom tool. It doesn't have breakouts. They've only just put the hand up option. You can only see, I think, 4 or 6 people on video, unlike Zoom, for instance. So, it's a different type of tool, but it's what you've got. The security is fairly good, says Leslie. So it's about working with that and making sure you're making the most of it. So whilst I might have a favourite, it's more about what is it you're trying to achieve, and then using the right tool for that job. So a summary of some of the things that we've gone through, and then we'll get into some more questions. If you've got more questions, pop them into the chat window. We'll answer those in just a moment. What we've looked at here is what a webinar is for lots of people. We know that a virtual classroom is for facilitation of small groups, and the e-learning usually is self-paced, click next, self-learning. We've also talked about lots of challenges that we have available to us, you know, in the tech, in our skills and so on. We know that some of us are in our comfort zone and some of us aren't, but as a community, you can support each other. And we've talked a lot about, we've got a remote audience we can't see, and how can we start dealing with that? We've got a range of tools that we can use, and I can see some questions coming in about that. We need to plan this and write this ahead and involve people as much as we possibly can to make it engaging and make great learning for them. So to our questions, Dahlia says, some organisations have security concerns about using Zoom. What can they do to ensure that it can be used securely? Really great question, Dahlia. And they're rightly so, there are those concerns, because what we have are things like Zoom bombing, you may have heard of, which is a really horrible experience. I've been Zoom bombed in a session before, and there are other security kind of concerns with it. Zoom are doing a great job. They're really moving forwards with that, so that might be reviewed in the future. Mike will share a link to our Zoom bombing discussion on our community where it's got some notes in there. Some of the first things to think about, Dahlia, are the setup that you've got of your Zoom account. And we've got links to the information about that, because some of the Zoom bombing that's happening, if people had the security and the options set up on their account differently, they could have avoided of some of those different things, not everything. Okay, so thank you for that question to everyone, Dahlia. Chantel says, can you do breakout rooms on Zoom? Yes, absolutely, we can do breakout rooms on Zoom. That is no problem at all. It's really interesting that what you have to do on Zoom is, enable it. So that's a really important point about Zoom. Lots of people say, oh, it doesn't do breakouts, it doesn't do polling of things. It does, but you have to go into your account and switch it on and enable it. So yes, it can do, you just have to switch it on. Etheline says, can you send us the links from chat separately? Perhaps the IEP will do that as a follow-up. David said Zoom has now has end-to-end encryption. Yes, if you look on the Zoom homepage, they've got an update on that. And Val says, we're banned from using Zoom. Yeah, a lot of people, a lot of organisations just went, whoa, stop. we can't have this open issue. But Zoom, as I say, they are working on it. Jeanette says, what sort of data usage is there on a webinar like this? We work with people who are using pay as you go. Really good question, Jeanette. There are some tools and some features, if you go and Google it and look on the Zoom help page, that can help you understand that kind of thing and about what's the best way to go. So obviously video uses a lot of data usage. You can, by screen sharing, it's a different level of data usage and uploading slides. So that's one for you to dig into a little bit deeper and have a think about, is this the best way of using these sessions? What's the best way of using things like the whiteboards? And actually, is it better to get through sessions maybe a little bit quicker if people are paying for their own data usage? Okay, so we've got a couple of links that are being shared. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Scott. If you have more questions, then please feel free to drop them into chat. Leslie said, videos are great. You can convert them to MP4. Yes, so Zoom allows you to do that, which is really quite nice. Kathy says, is there a good tutorial or guide to refer to on the basics of Zoom? Kathy, I think the support from Zoom itself is really good. So if you go to the Zoom website, and click on support, they've got webinars, they've got videos there, and they've got great support features in there too. So I find them really useful, Kathy. Not all organisations are as good as that, and Mike has shared the link in chat for you as well. So thank you very much, everybody. Please keep those questions coming if you want to. What I'd like to do is go into a little bit of a reflection and ask you, what is your light bulb moment from today? What is something you're taking away from today? A little learning nugget that you've experienced. And thank you, Shirley, for your kind comment. That animation, that passion, it really comes across, even if you can't necessarily see someone, even if you aren't necessarily in the same place together. So whilst you're typing that in, what Mike is going to do is he's got a resource list available, which has got tons of things. If you're new to this, if you're developing your skills, then we've got a resource list Mike is going to share for you. So what's your light bulb moment from today? People are saying simple interactive basics, the chat, hold and send, annotating slides, use of the participation tab, the design diagram, interact with people, enthusiasm, engage with learners online. All of these are light bulb moments because I'm a first time user on Zoom. That's absolutely wonderful. The annotation tool and how I can use that in unique ways, the stamp tool, the actual interaction, the kind of inverted commas, seeing attendees. It's possible to be interesting with just PowerPoint. Yes, Val, it is. An overview of Zoom, the planning and the doing is your homework, let me rephrase that. The planning and doing your homework is key. Thank you very much, Maureen. It's not as hard as I thought. Using basic tools can really maintain engagement. And using the tools, so you're not just talking to a slide, being creative. There's lots to learn, but it's exciting. It's opened a whole new world. A bit of a refresher. The delivery was excellent, thank you. I don't normally read out all the compliments, but I just read that straight out. Thank you, David. How much more interactive you can be, and to keep it simple, and the real enthusiasm to do this. And you've got the enthusiasm as well in your own topic areas, which are really kind of important as well. Clarity across all topics. This has shown how engaged a person can be made to feel, and how to adapt existing skills for live online work, and how to run better Zoom sessions, and making sure your voice is interesting. Yeah, there's lots of, I'm using my hands, I'm gesticulating, all sorts. It's about having that passionate delivery. Thank you so much, everybody. Absolutely great answers there. I'm really glad all of this could come through from you. So you've been really interactive. You've been amazing. What's the best way to practice, asks Dahlia. Get a free account if you can, or log into your system. Get 2 devices, whether it's your computer and a phone. Click things and see what happens. Learn with other people. That would be really good as well. So on behalf of Mike and myself at Lightbulb Moment, thank you. Scott, let me hand back to you to wrap up, because I'm sure there's lots of things that you've picked up here from the amazing comments from your members.
Thanks, Joe. Oh, wow, that was absolutely amazing. I would initiate a round of applause now if everyone could hear it. So thank you very much. And my Lightbulb moment is that I'm no longer scared. I mean, I need to put this into practice, but I'm no longer fearful of actually doing this. And it all seemed quite alien to me a few weeks ago or months ago, and now it feels a great deal less alien. So thank you very much for that, Joe. Just a reminder for everyone, really, that if you enjoyed this and you want to repeat it, loads and loads of fantastic learning in there. So I'd suggest you go over to the IEP YouTube channel this afternoon, pick up this webinar and many of the other ones that we've already published through the series, and make sure that you subscribe to that also, because you'll get an email to tell you that there's a new webinar, a new video up there for you. Please join us next week for the next in our series, which is the first in our employer engagement series, and making sure that we're focusing on employers within the dynamic of employability as much as we do practitioner delivery and client customer engagement. So please head on that same time, same place. Really, really fantastic. Thank you again, Joe. Everyone stay safe, stay well, and please join us next week. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Mike.